Right now on Indianapolis This Week, a Sunday morning exclusive.
No regrets.
Whatsoever?
No regrets whatsoever. I stand up for what I believe in.
Senator Mike Delph sits down for his first one-on-one interview since being punished for taking on his leadership on the same-sex marriage amendment. We discuss the political fight, his punishment, and the future of his party. Plus, the mayor of Indianapolis preparing for the state of the city. How will Indy tackle public safety? And are we really getting a new soccer stadium in downtown Indianapolis?
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
We begin with a Sunday exclusive. Senator Mike Delph, whose tweets opposing the same-sex marriage amendment stirred the political pot and got him punished. HJR 3 is now history. An attempt to revive the measure in the Senate last Monday, it failed. The second sentence barring civil unions was removed from that bill, pushing the amendment until 2016. Joining us now exclusively is Republican Senator Mike Delph, who represents Indiana's 29th district, which includes Carmel, Indianapolis, and Zionsville. And you can find him on Twitter at Mike Delph. Senator Delph, welcome to the program. You took a tough stance on HJR 3. You criticized your leadership, and this is what's happened to you. They've punished you by imposing these sanctions. You're losing your position as the Assistant Leader of Communications. You're losing your ranking title on the Judiciary Committee. You're going to lose your press secretary. And your seat's going to be rearranged in the Senate chamber. Is that punishment fair, or is it too excessive?
You know, whenever you stick up for your convictions and your values, and you take a stand, there are consequences to taking a stand. And when I held my press conference, I knew that there would be consequences, and I accept the consequences.
Any regrets? You were really tough on Twitter. You went after some churches. You were very pointed in your commentary. You did not hold back. Any regrets about what you said on Twitter last week?
No regrets.
Whatsoever?
No regrets whatsoever. I stand up for what I believe in, for my convictions, for my constituents. Over 60% of my constituents wanted the chance to vote on HJR 3 in 2014, and unfortunately the process and leadership took that right away from them.
What is the future now for the same-sex marriage amendment? We know that for now it will not be on the ballot on 2014, but there's a group called the National Organization for Marriage that wants to weighing its options to see if they can put this on the ballot this year. Should they pursue that, or should we just let it go?
Well, the legislature spoke clearly that they don't want the voters to vote on this in 2014, and I don't think any type of judicial activism is acceptable because the legislature weighed in on this. I don't support them going to court to try to force this on the ballot. I think that would be a bad move.
Do you think in 2016 we'll be back at the same spot, or do you think we'll just try to skip over this?
I think that there was a concerted effort to kill this issue, and I would be very, very surprised if it's ever brought back to the Indiana General Assembly.
Freedom Indiana, were they powerful in this argument? Because you also had Advance America on the other side, but did Freedom Indiana have the upper hand in this campaign?
You know, I don't know. I don't know the folks at Freedom Indiana. I know I have a couple constituents that were involved with them that showed up to my town meetings, and they were always very cordial. But they were there when they needed to be there. Unfortunately, evangelical Christian conservatives were not there when they needed to be there, and I found it very ironic that our Statehouse Pastors' Day was the day after we voted on HJR 3 in the Indiana State Senate. They were a day late and $1 short.
Will you pay for that, though? Because you've been very critical of the churches. Will you, when it's your turn to run again, will they come out and remind you of your criticism of them?
You know, anybody is free to exercise their political rights in any way they see fit. And so, you know, I stand by what I've done, I stand by what I've said, and I have no regrets.
You have a supermajority in both the House and the Senate. Were you surprised that the supermajority could not get this through?
We have supermajorities in both the House and the Senate. Most of my colleagues are professed Christian conservatives, and we have the most marriage amendment friendly governor that we could ever possibly have, which is why I said at my press conference, if we're not going to get it to the people in 2014, it ain't ever going to happen.
What does this rest of the session look like? Because this issue really sort of consumed a lot of the session. Will we see anything done on pre-K, on the personal business property tax, on any other issue, jobs, transportation? Will anything else come out of the General Assembly this year?
Well, I think the pre-K initiative was sent to Summer Study Committee committee by the Senate Committee on Education this week. We still are trying to resolve the differences between what the governor proposed, House Bill 1001 and Senate Bill 1, in the area of personal property tax. I think we still have a chance to get something done in that area. But recall that the legislative session, the short session, is designed to be for emergency purposes only. And so we're really not supposed to be engaging in a lot of substantive public policy debates, but things have changed in that definition as well. But we have about 3 weeks left in the session, and I hope that we get something done in the area of personal property tax relief.
The reason I asked you about the supermajority is I've just been sort of, as someone who doesn't cover the legislature every day, that here the governor has his party in control of both and is having a hard time getting his people, both ladies and gentlemen, to follow his agenda. He's having a hard time on the pre-K program, on the tax program. Why isn't his party helping him out?
You know, that's a great question. You know, I said in my press conference the President pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House are the two most powerful positions in state government, and they have a lot of ability to assign members to committee, to assign bills to committee, to set legislative priorities, and to move bills through the legislative process. And so that's probably a better question asked to them than to me.
Tomorrow you will be taking on the Do Not Call list, one of the most popular laws in Indiana history, because no one really likes telemarketers, at least during the dinner hour or on Sunday morning when they're trying to get to church. What will you do to try to strengthen the Do Not Call list law?
Well, I was trying to get rid of all the exemptions in Indiana's Do Not Call list, and ultimately what we decided to do was to introduce a resolution in concert with efforts by the Indiana Attorney General to try to get the FCC to take another look at what they're doing, because of the fact that technology has changed, and so traditional regulatory barriers have broken down a little bit. And so we're trying to get the FCC to do what they can do on top of what the state of Indiana is doing with our own Do Not Call list. But yes, if we could, you know, mitigate the number of phone calls the number of unwanted phone calls, I should say, that people are getting at home, I think we will have provided a service.
And there are some calls that people do want to receive, but we still are receiving a lot of these what we call robocalls, the automated calls. And hopefully will this law address those? Because that seems to be what people are really upset about, is hearing some automated call drone on for minute upon minute.
This resolution would direct the FCC, per the Indiana General Assembly, to try to look into those issues. Absolutely.
Senator Mike Dell, thank you so much. Good luck with your bill, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. The National Organization for Marriage has decided not to force HJR 3 to the ballot box in 2014. The group says it will spend its time preparing to elect what they call a strong pro-amendment legislature. Turning to another big issue at the Statehouse, a setback for one of the governor's major initiatives. Lawmakers will not vote on a plan to create an experimental preschool voucher program. You just heard Senator Delph talk about that. Now the program will go to a committee for further review and won't be voted on until next year at the earliest. The decision comes 1 week after the governor provided rare testimony in support of the bill. Still, the Senate Education Committee unanimously approved sending the proposal to a summer study committee.
And then put us in a position next year that we can debate among all budgeting priorities as to where we want to spend our money.
Now, under the plan, the state would create a voluntary program for up to 1,000 of the neediest 4-year-olds. The voucher program would be a 2-year pilot launched in about 5 counties. In 4 days, Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard will deliver his State of the City address. After the break, the vision and the pulse for 2014. On Thursday, Mayor Greg Ballard will deliver his State of the City address. So far, 2014 has been challenging for the Circle City between the massive snowstorm and that polar vortex to a disturbing rise in homicides on our streets. City officials and law enforcement have had their hands full. Joining us now is Ryan Vaughn, Chief of Staff for Mayor Greg Ballard. Ryan also previously served as a city-county councilor. Welcome to the program. When the mayor gives the speech, will he say that the state of the city is fair, good, or great?
Other than the weather, he'll say it's great. We've experienced a lot of really positive momentum over the last few years, given the investments we've made in infrastructure and otherwise, and we're starting to see the rewards for those investments in continued economic development, the growth of our neighborhoods, and so forth.
So this speech is supposed to give us sort of the pulse of the city as well as a vision as to 2015, right? Mm-hmm. Looking ahead. So what will that look like? What will that speech look like?
He's really going to set a long-term vision for this city, focused on the quality of life in our neighborhoods, public safety, investments in infrastructure in our neighborhoods, investments in infrastructure that attract jobs, and something we refer to as sort of the emergence of cultural identity, or how do we develop the tools to help neighborhoods promote themselves and all the things they have to offer.
The mayor has said in the past that his number one issue, of course, is public safety, but there's also now mass transit. Which is the top priority, public safety or mass transit?
Public safety. Public safety has been and will continue to be our top priority. The mayor is very clear in his vision for us and his direction to us that it's our number one responsibility to provide for the safety and the security of our citizens. And so much of what he does on a day-to-day basis and what will be discussed in the state of the city will deal specifically with our public safety resources. How do we increase them? How do we allocate them for better results? How do we engage the community in such a way that they're empowered to help us deal with public safety issues? A variety of different initiatives in that front.
On the issue of public safety, will the mayor also be pushing for more efficiencies? He's often talked about that with Director Troy Riggs, about finding more efficiencies across the board in public safety. Are there more efficiencies to be found?
The answer to that question is always yes, right? You can always do better with what you have, and it's a constantly evolving process. On one hand, you need to always be evaluating whether or not what you're doing is generating the results you expect, but on the other, advances in technology, reallocation of resources, additional police officers, all of these things help you become more efficient in what you're doing. So we always maintain focus on efficiency and will continue to do so.
The mayor and a number of other mayors in a bipartisan effort challenged the governor's personal business property tax. Did he get any pushback from the governor's office at all, since he does represent the state's largest city, and he happens to be a Republican? Any pushback from the governor?
I would call it pushback, and there's always an ongoing discussion with the governor's office relative to revenues to local government. And the mayor's made it very clear, along with several other mayors from around the state, that in this time of diminishing revenue and increasing cost, cities can't afford to take a substantial hit on their revenues again and provide the services that people in our city expect us to be able to provide. So our position has always been on things like the business personal property tax. Eliminating it is fine to the extent it doesn't cause harm to the city's ability to deliver core services. And so it's a legislative process. They call it a process for a reason. We don't have 100% agreement, that's for sure. And we'd love to see some language out there that accomplishes those goals for us, which we haven't seen yet. But it's a dialogue.
Final question, are we really getting, or there's talk about a football stadium for the Indy 11 in downtown Indianapolis. Is that in the cards?
There's been, at the General Assembly, a bill introduced that would build a soccer stadium. Our position has always been, to the extent that we could add to our already robust sport business downtown, which is professional sports, it needs to do so in such a way that it accommodates the diversity of sports, not just soccer, but potentially concerts and other emerging sports in our community. And it needs to financially cash flow, and that's very important for us. We have a lot of fantastic assets that are already on the books, that already require our maintenance, that already require us to get tenants and fill them. So it's an issue that we'll deal with. It's not something that I anticipate we'll be discussing in the next several weeks, but certainly in the next several months.
And in case I called it football by mistake, around the world it is called football. So in case I did say, I think I meant soccer stadium.
I was tracking you.
You were tracking me? Football around the world, soccer in Indianapolis.
Right.
Brian Vaughn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please come again. Next, Kip 2 and Abdul Hakim Shabazz are getting ready to debate. We're joined by our political insiders when Indianapolis This Week continues. Joining us now, two of our political insiders, Democrat Kip 2 and Abdul Hakim Shabazz of IndyPolitics.org, and Statehouse reporter Katie Heinz.
Wanted to talk first of all about the governor's agenda. What is the future of it, given the action that we've seen here in the Senate this week alone?
Well, one of the governor's big items was the elimination, reduction of the business personal property tax. That's the tax businesses pay on equipment. He's not going to get a full repeal, but lawmakers are going to do something, maybe give a little bit of a reduction relief, and then long-term look at how they could phase out that business personal property tax over time. You got to give the credit to the mayors across Indianapolis. Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard in particular for leading the charge and putting the brake on an immediate repeal of that business tax.
Well, I think the governor's agenda is in peril. He was pushing hard for pre-K funding, and he's not going to get even a pilot program. He's going to get a study. He was strongly in favor of HJR 3 being on the ballot this year. That's not going to happen. His business personal property, I think, is going to get watered down. So far, I don't think it's he's in very good shape when you're looking at the scorecard, but it's not the end of session, and governors have a way of always recovering at the end of session at conference committee time. But I will say this governor's approach is a lot different than the last governor. The last governor would get people behind closed doors and yell at him to get his way, and ended up getting his way. This guy seems a lot more conciliatory.
Did he do that?
Well,
one person's yelling, there's another person's just being more direct.
Well, I mean, on the business personal property tax, so we heard in committee this week one senator say that he thinks this issue might be too complicated. You've got two separate plans that are pretty different. I mean, we're talking about reducing this tax, but in very different ways. Can they find common ground?
There is some room for some common ground. For example, one of the things I wrote about in the column was basically giving everybody sort of the Senate version, where you phase it out for businesses, $25,000 and under, and then give the locals that replacement revenue. And then as new jobs come in, some of that replacement revenue goes away. So there are lots of different things that they can do. And like Kip said, we still have 2-3 weeks left in session, and sort of like college, the real work begins, once they start going to conference committee. So I would expect to see something come out. It won't be the full thing of what anybody wanted, but I would expect a hybrid.
Kip, I was surprised that on the issue of pre-K, I thought that would be a bipartisan issue, that everyone would say, sure, anything for the cute 4-year-old, we'll do whatever it takes. But that also fell apart.
Yeah, it's probably the most disappointing thing in the session so far. It's been disappointing for a long time. It is, every study shows that it is the best investment you can make of dollars. So if you're talking about long-term investment, the state should really be doing it, and I don't understand why they aren't.
And we were talking about, 5 counties and between $9 to $11 million. So really, as far as a price tag, not really that expensive. I mean, I don't have $9 million, so why not pay that?
It's less than the soccer stadium, isn't it?
Well, the soccer stadium would be privately paid for. But here's what you need to remember about early child education. What Senator Kelly has expressed a concern is reopening the budget and doing anything budget-wise in a non-budget year. That is a big thing. This is not a budget year. But do it as a summer study committee, give folks time to take a look at it, and then you might be able to expand it in the next budget year.
Yeah, but we're going to cut the business property tax potentially this year.
But the business personal property tax does not affect the state bottom dollar.
That's a good point, but usually we do those things in budget years as well. And I've been around the session a long time. We always dip into the budget in a non-budget year for priorities that are really important.
This week we also heard that the BMV is facing its second lawsuit regarding the overcharges on fees and services. Does the governor need to get involved in this, because this impacts a lot of people? Do we do more with the BMV?
I'm really stunned at how this can even happen. I mean, I think things are supposedly automated. I don't see how it's possible that once something's plugged into a computer that it spits out the wrong number and people are being overcharged, unless it is really deliberate by somebody. And I'm afraid that it is deliberate, and people need to get on top of what's going on over there. They're starting to make the rollout of Obamacare's website look pretty good at state government level.
I don't know about all that. I mean, I always said my good friend was prone to exaggeration, but now you just being silly, old friend. No, I mean, this is the second lawsuit. One thing that is different, we do have a new BMV commissioner who's taken over. Perhaps they can figure out exactly what the old bugs are in the system, but you're right. The state can't getting sued for overcharged people. This does affect lots of Hoosiers, so hopefully, the Pence administration will really dig into the BMV and fix whatever this is.
All right, we'll see what happens.
Governor Pence met with HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius on Friday regarding the Healthy Indiana plan and expanding the plan instead of using the traditional Medicaid. What do you think about this idea?
Well, if the Obama administration wants Indiana to expand Medicaid, well, they let it do it the Indiana way, which people are happy, they like it, we keep cost controls, and people who are on Medicaid have some skin in the game, as opposed to traditional Medicaid expansion was just ripe with problems.
Well, Kentucky, I think, has led the way on this, and I think it's an embarrassment that Kentucky's doing a better job of signing people up for the health care plan and expanding Medicaid. They're going to have their folks insured in the state of Kentucky, and they're going to be ahead of us. As a Hoosier, I'm deeply embarrassed by it. I hope that the governor comes to his senses and the legislature comes to their senses. It's a lot of money they're leaving on the table.
Do you think the goal of having 7 million people in Indiana registered by the March 31st deadline is realistic?
Well, they've had problems getting people registered already. First of all, the website didn't work, and now the administration,
now.
They're coming in under numbers because they're not getting the people to sign up. And this is in states where they have actually set, up these exchanges. They're still behind schedule. And what people keep forgetting is this is not free money. The federal government will only fund the Medicaid expansion for the first 3 years. After that, Indiana's going to go find a few other $100 million to pick up the tab. Where's that money going to come from?
Well, if we're serious about cutting health care costs, which is part of the overall goal of the Health Reform Act, with the Affordable Care Act, then we'll start to see those cuts and we'll be able to afford it. I mean, the fact of the matter is that all these red states with Republican governors who think they might want to be president, who are afraid of their base being for Obamacare, are engaged in sabotage of this reform. And it is on the books. The Supreme Court has established it. We've had 40, 70, how many votes to try to repeal it? It's the law of the land.
And you're right, if there's any, and part of the law says states have the ability to opt in or opt out. And if anybody's done any sort of sabotage, this has been the Obama administration, they're self-sabotage.
Katie, we sit on the end so we can escape when we start fighting. So anytime you want to get up with me, let me know. The conversation between our excellent experts, between our insiders, continues on Twitter. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion and their opinion as well. Stay with Kip and Abdul and Laura and Jennifer throughout the week. Indianapolis This Week continues after the break. Thank you for sharing your feedback about our program on Twitter. And here's one response on the issue of mass transit. Michael Toulouse says in his words, when people say the bus is for poor people, that's just an attitude. It can be changed. Easier to change attitudes than infrastructure. Share your thoughts and join the debate. Tweet at our insiders or me at Rafael on TV. That's it for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. Next week, our special Oscars edition. The latest news and weather, we are always on through the RTV6 app and the IndyChannel.com. I'm Rafael Sanchez. Have a great day.